Know what I mean?
Welcome to Ernest Roulette,
the only Ernest podcast with a wheel.
What Ernest movie are we watching today, Neil? Let's find out.
Yes! Fuck! Come on!
Damn it! Welcome once again to Ernest Roulette. We are here today live at Jurassic Sound and Light in Weymouth, Massachusetts. We're going to talk about Ernest Goes to Africa, which came out direct-to-video in 1997, 2 years after Ace Ventura went to Africa in Ace Ventura 2 When Nature Calls.
When Nature Calls.
Which I think was a major inspiration for this movie.
Probably.
Did any of us see this growing up?
No.
I'm going to say I did at some point. I did not retain 99% of it, but there were a couple lines that totally rang a bell for me. And I realized, oh, we had this on DVD just floating around my house at some point. And I think I was just a little too old to really check it out, but it must have been on at some point. I remembered a couple things from it.
And Ryan, you said you hadn't?
I had not, no. I distinctly remember back in the day, even before Blockbuster, of the Ma and Pa video store, the one in Kingston, which as we discussed was called Video Scene, that I saw the cover art on the VHS tape and went, no thanks.
Yeah. I remember getting to high school, and the first time Ernest nostalgia kicked in, that was always the subject that came up. If someone said, know what I mean, like haphazardly in conversation, and someone else went, oh, you're like Ernest, someone would always bring up, hey, remember Ernest Goes to Africa? That really racist one? Like, that was the thing everyone knew about it, was like, oh, you know, Ernest is in blackface in that movie. I think we all assumed the worst.
We went into this with our seatbelts on. We were not, yeah.
Neil, were you assuming the worst?
Yeah.
Did it defy expectations?
Well, I've had a couple people say that Ernest in the Army has some even worse racism in it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious, like, well, what is the second to worst Ernest movie gonna be like? You know?
It is a race for the bottom at this stage,
Yes.
I think. Someone on our comment section referred to these final two Ernest movies as the steerage Ernest movies.
Bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it kind of lived up to the hype. Clearly shot on video.
Yes.
I think it's 30 frames per second, whatever it is. If you go on IMDb, it says it was shot on like Panavision 35 millimeter. I don't know about that.
There's a weird frame rate conversion. I don't know if it happened in pose because they shot this movie in Africa. We'll pull up the Ernest map. Ernest is actually in Africa.
In Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, I mean, it takes place in a fictional country, city. I don't know where it's supposed to be. They're just in Africa as far as the movie's concerned.
They went to Africa to film this, but they wouldn't even go to North Carolina to shoot Slam Dunk Ernest.
There's actually, you know, a film industry in Johannesburg and stuff, and they used actors from South Africa. I don't know who was flown in aside from like Linda Cash and Jim Varney.
John Cherry.
Well, yeah. Is he in the movie early on at the restaurant?
Yeah, he's like a jerk patron that like gives her some lip. Let's go through the story.
All right, so the beginning of the movie, we see a faux Indiana Jones villain, an Indiana Jones style colonialist sneak up on a caricature of an African village, and he steals 2 jewels out of a big statue they worship. It's called the Eyes of Igoli.
You'll hear about these a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he takes the 2 eyes, and kind of like at the beginning of the first Indiana Jones movie, they chase him through the jungle, and he escapes to...
An airplane.
Yep, and just like the beginning of Indiana Jones, he gets on the airplane, he gets the eyes out.
The guy flying the airplane says, "Yeah, give me the stones, and I'll let you on."
It's like a line right out of Raiders.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah.
And leaves the guy behind to get slaughtered by the tribe.
Yes.
And he flies off, and we find out this guy is kind of the main villain later, right?
There's like 6 villains in this movie, and he's like the alpha. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who, for some reason, at this stage of the game, is doing the legwork himself
Yeah.
of flying the plane.
They bring back the opening titles. This movie has
Yeah.
a song. It's got Ernest mugging for the camera with some props. It's got a font.
It's like an F grade version of the Ernest Scared Stupid in opening
Exactly.
titles, right?
The beginning of Ernest Goes to Jail, it's almost like a Saul Bass,
Yeah.
like a like Vertigo or North by Northwest, or
I
a
love
fun, or James. It's almost like a James Bond opening, a highly stylized.
Yeah.
Big, colorful backgrounds. Years later, we would call it an iPod commercial. Before that. And then at the beginning of Ernest Scared Stupid, there's some fun stuff where they use, B-roll and B-movies of royalty-free, public domain horror movies and goofy. So they're horror stuff, but it's goofy and silly. It's establishing that this is a horror comedy.
Yeah.
The beginning of this movie is similar to Scared Stupid, but the set pieces they're playing off of are Africans.
Yeah.
Stock footage of animals.
Some, yes. And African or African-American actors in faux tribal gear.
There's a guy on set with Jim Varney,
Yes.
And he's got the spear and the...
He's not in the rest of the movie.
No,
You think maybe it's going to be like a buddy comedy and that's like his friend.
Right.
No, he's just like another African guy.
If he's one of the members of the tribe, they make no distinction later on.
So there's a few gags where like Ernest's like mounted up on a wall like a elephant head or whatever, and he turns into a shrunken head at one point. At least they brought it back and they kind of tried. And
I don't think they tried. They looked back and said, well, what reviewed best? Like, what did people react to best? And like, well, the opening titles were Scared Stupid. People liked that.
Yeah.
Because it looks exactly like that opening title.
Yeah,
but
it's the same.
But there's no money. There's nothing funny going on in them. It's lit real bad. It's just very awkward, and the frame rate of the camera is hitting you in the face. It's a bummer out of the gate. Part of the charm of the previous Ernest movies that we really got into, like Camp and Christmas and what have you, is they weren't expensive movies, right? They're making these movies by the skin of their teeth. They're pulling it off. Like they're just being very creative to cut corners and work with the budgetary limitations that they have. This movie is a D-grade equivalent of that. It's too cheap. It's too cheap for me to find endearing.
Who knows what the budget actually is, how it compares. But I think it's just something about the energy, and it's weird because Slam Dunk Ernest came out how many years before? Like two? Yeah.
Yep.
Same team as far as I can tell. John Cherry, Coke Sam's had left the project
After school.
And I think maybe it's a combination of leaving the safety of Vancouver and flying to an entirely new continent that, they've never done a movie
And just
in.
having to get through their shot list. Like it's hot out, it's uncomfortable. The actors are probably doing the best they can with the material they have, but
the material is bad too. There's no excuse.
There's nothing really great in the script for them to work with. There's just a lot of awkward, like Jim giving it all he's got. He's a very giving actor. This is the first movie you can see him sort of phone certain shots in, but it just looks like physical exhaustion to me.
In the first time in these movies, not only do actors seem tired, but I'm looking at Jim Varney going, having studied your body of work, you're starting to look old.
Mm-hmm.
You don't look like an old man, but you don't look like the same guy. You look different than the man who filmed, Ernest Goes to Camp.
It's time to start showing up in dramas, Jim.
How does Ernest get roped into this fiasco with the eyes of
Igoli?
Like, how does Ernest get pulled into this?
Well, you find out that Ernest is an auto mechanic.
For a hot second.
Yep, who is terrible at working in cars. And he uses the lift and destroys a presumably rich woman's car.
The first joke he says in the movie is he lists a bunch of like nonsense car terms and then says,
"Of course, women seldom understand stuff like this."
Which is the joke is that he doesn't either. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
He's arrogant. Yeah.
But that's not the kind of thing that Ernest ever says.
If the movie was made a bit better, I probably would have given that a pass, but it did stick out to me as odd. Like, why is he like
he's stupid, but his stupidity never includes like misogyny.
And he's actually a bad mechanic. In the other jobs he's had, he's not that bad at them. Just some freak accident.
And I wish that there was even a line where like the lady, the customer, knew more about cars than he did. That would work.
You can make that joke funnier. You can make that joke hit harder. And he gets fired. He has this waitress he's really into. What's her name? What's Linda Cash's name in this movie?
Renee,
is that her name?
I think it's Renee, yeah.
She's the most important character in this movie, and I'm having a hard time remembering her name. Ernest has a crush on Renee. She's a waitress.
You got Irma, Renee. They're all kind of anagrams almost of Ernest, I think.
True. This is the last Linda Cash movie. It's her third movie.
Yep.
And she brings it. She does the best she can with the material.
Good. Unlike the other movies, her legs are out a lot in the movie
because they're in Africa.
Well, they are in Africa, but I do get the sense that like the camera that they put that in there deliberately a little bit to try and like, look, there's a lady. She's got it's more than the other movies have ever done, except for Dr. Otto, which also had some kind of.
She's not dressed like a school marm again.
I think it probably came down to, hey, we're in Africa, it's really hot. Now we're just examining her costume, I guess. But they in Slam Dunk, Irma got vamped up in a way that was very cartoonish. Like she was wearing like a shawl and her hair was up.
Yeah.
And she dressed like literally Cleopatra. So like the male gaze stuff was always very kid friendly, I'd think. In this, I never thought it was like, I mean, she's a little eggy, but also.
I mean, they bring it up at times too and stuff, and she gets tied up and stuff. I don't know. I felt like it was just, it's not that bad, but it felt a little off for an Ernest movie. Like even Irma in the previous movie, that was like mostly just a joke, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas this, it's just like, oh, you could just like see her legs in every scene she's in, pretty much, you know?
It's the equivalent of Ernest vest.
She literally at one point later addresses when she takes off some clothing.
I was watching it earlier on my phone with headphones. And my wife Ming happened to look over my shoulder during the scene where they're out in the jungle, and she takes off her pants.
Well, this is what happens when a 90s woman falls for you.
Yeah,
and gives them to Ernest to inflate like a raft or something.
Yeah.
So what Ming saw was just this woman taking off her pants, handing them to Ernest, and then Ernest holding it up to his face and going. So she's like, is he huffing her panties? What are you watching?
I think Linda, she's
a good comedic actor and everything.
Yeah.
But they just used her in a different way than they have in previous movies. They're like, hey, she's got nice gams. Let's just like throw them out there because people are going to be bored watching this movie.
Ernest is pining for her. You know, he has a big crush on her, and she's not interested in him because she thinks he's an ordinary schmo. Is that the term?
Yep.
Yeah.
She's a schmo.
And she's like, I need an adventurous guy to win me over. And
Her life is in a dead-end rut as a waitress.
Yeah.
And she wants to have, she wants a big adventure.
Yeah. And Ernest, as we know, has had none of those.
I don't think this takes place in the same universe because, he does not acknowledge any of the adventures he's gone on. He specifically says like, oh, I lead a boring life, you know.
I never helped out Santa Claus.
Trolls ain't real. Like, you know what I mean?
We see some of Ernest's home life, and there's a scene in Ernest's home life that breaks, it broke the movie for me pretty early on, where
Thank you.
Ernest has a pet goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think the first thing that would break me on this movie would be the racist stuff, right? Because there is some racist stuff in this movie. But like you said, we showed up with our seatbelts on. I'm ready for that. What I wasn't ready for is Ernest fucking kills a fish, man. He like straight up kills a goldfish. It's like a really violent way to kill.
It's a garbage disposal.
It's a garbage disposal. It's a really...
I honestly fucking think it's a real fish too.
I think
they really let a goldfish go down a sink drain. And maybe it was a fake sink. Maybe they had a little bowl of water underneath.
Yeah, and they did a sound edit, but there was definitely a real goldfish flopping around.
Yeah, it was like flashbacks to that Faith No More music.
I thought the same thing. The joke is he's just preposterously stupid. It's amazing he remembers to shut his mouth. He's like a Hemsworth in the new Ghostbusters movie, where like you just look at him like, how dumb could he be? How dumb could this guy be? And nothing clever comes from it. So it's a net loss for the movie.
If he had done something that would have caused actual harm to Rimshot, we'd be pissed. Hurting an animal is so not Ernest.
That's not like
We might sound like we're being overly sensitive here with this movie, but when you're making an Ernest film, and it's like the 9th Ernest film, especially coming after Slam Dunk Ernest, and you have to be aware that you're making these movies for kids, right? And kids are going to see a goldfish get chopped up in like a food processor or garbage disposal or whatever and get bummed out. They're not going to go, kids care.
We'll get into it, but this is the goriest Ernest movie.
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get into it. He's pining for Renee. She's not interested in him. He sticks his face on the glass again in this movie.
It's a cheat.
It's a cheat, yeah. That's just what his face looks like.
Yeah.
So then it just kind of cuts to this flea market. There's no reason for him to go. Yeah. There's a lot of random cuts in this movie where it's just Ernest is here now.
There's no connective material. There's a lot of crossfades. There's a lot of missing material, and the movie is like 90 minutes on the dot. You feel them stretching to get to that 90 minutes in a way the other movies did not have to do.
Yeah.
It's very boring. There's a lot of weird takes that last a little too long. This flea market scene where Ernest is looking around and accidentally buys these diamonds that he turns into a yo-yo.
First of all, he just lost his job. What is he doing buying shit he doesn't need? I guess he's Ernest.
It is for the dollar bin.
Yeah.
In his defense.
Yeah.
He wants to impress Renee. Okay. And it's not going to work. Because she even says to him, like, I have enough of your junk. or I've received gifts from you in the past and I don't like them.
Yeah.
To add a little more convoluted confusion, another thief now has the eyes of a goalie. They have now handed off to a third person From the faux Indiana Jones villain to the man flying the plane to another thief who's running, being pursued by two like goons, G-men in cheap suits.
And we're supposed to be in some like small town America flea market, and it clearly is in Africa. It's not in America.
This guy is running. He's on foot. He's being chased. He stashes these diamonds that he's stolen into like this pile of junk that Ernest later goes through.
The guy that on the counter is asleep.
Yes, and the goons catch this guy. The guy they're chasing, this thief, it's a white guy.
Yep.
He's doing a very offensive accent. I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be Indian or
Brown
Middle
face.
Eastern or something. Yeah,
I don't think he knows either.
I don't think he's credited. I tried to find him in the credits. I think they left him out for.
I think he didn't want to be known.
Yeah,
Perhaps
probably.
he chose. He asked.
He chose wisely. But they get him. They lock him in the back of the limo, and then they dump snakes on him. So this is the third person to die if you include the fish in the movie.
Ernest and snakes, man. Ernest movies and their snakes.
I think John Cherry has a phobia.
He's trying to work through it.
Yeah.
For some reason, a cop starts chasing Ernest. The three of us don't recall why he's being chased. It might be because he thinks Ernest is stealing this birdhouse or something, or Ernest pushed somebody over. But the end of this scene is just Jim Varney running left to right. He runs to the camera, stops before he hits the camera for some reason, and he just goes, "Wah!" for like 10 seconds as the camera slowly crossfades into the next scene. It's just one of many awkward, like, "All right, Jim, go!"
So we meet the main villain in this scene. He's in the limo. He's calling the shots here.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I don't remember. He has an English accent. He is one of the most charismatic characters, and he's actually a character.
Yeah. He looks a little like a later Tim Curry role, perhaps.
He eats up more screen time than Jim Varney, I think.
Yeah.
He might be in the movie more than Jim.
Let's give him a name right now.
Tim.
Okay.
Tim. So Tim,
the villain Tim.
Tim kidnaps
Renee.
Renee, wait, Ernest shows up to save Renee.
Well, what Ernest did not realize he had the diamonds.
Yeah, Ernest
he's trying to think of a gift for Renee, and he puts the diamonds together and makes a yo-yo.
Great.
There is one shot that I did laugh a little bit. He's painting the yo-yo, and he just paints over his thumb. And it's a really quick shot. And it's just... That's all I can get out of this movie.
that's the positive.
Hey, look, he's bad at painting the yo-yo.
So Ernest goes to save Edna, right?
Renee.
It was
For some reason, this villain decides, instead of killing Ernest and Renee, to send them to Africa.
Because he thinks they're special agents or something.
Yeah, and he's working for this prince who funded the stealing of these diamonds. And so that's how Ernest goes to Africa.
Ernest even says, like, Africa?
When you arrive in Africa.
Africa?
Really?
Like, really? That's what we're doing? And, crossfade, now they're in Africa.
Crossfade, yeah, they land. It's some B word. It's not a real country in Africa.
It's a fake country.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. They're in Africa. Put it up on the map, guys.
Hooray, he's in Africa.
How does Ernest get out of their grips? Well,
he falls out of a truck.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's in a sack. The truck hits a bump.
He lands in a river.
Great idea.
Crocodile River. There is a random shot of him crawling out of the river, and there's a crocodile puppet.
Yeah.
And he sticks his fingers in its nose.
Yeah.
Pulls them out. There's goo. And he looks to the camera, and he does the ew,
which he does quite a few times in this movie.
There's I can't believe I'm saying this, but there's too many ew hoo hoos in this movie.
I think it's perhaps to remind the audience that's one of his things. That and you know what I mean.
I think in Ernest Goes to Jail, he does the hey once.
Right.
And I think in even Scared Stupid, he only does it once or twice. Mm-hmm. In that movie, he should have done it like a dozen times. In
disgusting.
This, I want to say he does it like 6 times. And the thing with this crocodile scene is, this is what I thought the movie was going to be, was like Crocodile Dundee or whatever. Like,
well, I think calling it a scene is really inaccurate.
Sure. Well, it's necessary to the movie because it's the motivation for why Ernest shows up in brownface.
I remember being confused because he literally just suddenly cuts to him sneaking into this mansion
to rescue
Renee
from Tim.
But I remember being confused because, like, how does he know? I guess maybe the river was on the property.
It's missing information.
Yeah,
for some reason,
missing.
Ernest knows where Renee is. But the reason it informs the brown face scene is Ernest is covered in mud.
Oh, okay.
That's literally it.
Yeah.
It's really lazy.
Because I remember thinking, well, it's a rich people manor. Why doesn't he just steal a suit from a closet and go into his upper crust character from
Guy Dandy.
Guy Dandy. Oh, that would have been great.
That would have been
much
not
better.
racist and funny.
You know what? That's very true, actually.
So this is the infamous scene, right? This is the one that in high school or junior high, people would say, oh, I don't know if you ever saw Ernest Goes to Africa, but he's in blackface in this movie. This is all speculative. A lot of this is. None of us have read the multiple books about Jim Varney's work history that we should have read. Is there a chance they looked at, okay, we're going to do that Ace Ventura sequel, but with Ernest. Let's go to Africa. And one person on the writing staff or one of John Cherry's buddies said, I mean, just don't do blackface. You know, don't make fun of black people too much.
Yeah, don't put them in the black. Yeah.
And then maybe someone else in the room said, oh, I know how we can walk around that. We'll just do Indian people. Because maybe in 1997, they thought it was just easier to get away with that kind of thing. I mean, we're in 2018, 2019 right now, and it's only been in the last year or so that we've really even turned over a leaf with Hank Azaria doing Apu, which I personally never have had a problem with. But I know a lot of people, it's just their line in the sand. They don't want to cross that, even the voice stuff.
No, I thought about the problem with Apu as well.
Yeah.
I mean, because he's doing a very Apu-like voice.
I mean, this is only, all right, so this is 10 years after the last Short Circuit movie.
Yeah.
Which is more palatable because at least that character is intelligent and
that's a big thing.
And he has a silly accent, but he's telling jokes. And Ernest in this movie is this ridiculous. He's like a slave or something. He's just prostrate on the ground constantly and just coming up with like the most ridiculous, like, oh, I worship your feet shit.
Yeah. And the thing is, the hardest part about it is that Jim's putting his back into it. He is using his like acting talents to sell this whatever joke. And there's like a scale out there. And on one end of the scale is Hank Azaria playing Apu, where it's like a fully realized character. It's not just a bunch of stereotypical jokes.
There's no makeup involved.
It's not, it's just a voice. So that's one end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum is, like
Mickey Rooney, like
or Shane Dawson in blackface eating poop and stuff like that,
or any piece of media from before 1940.
And somewhere in the middle of the scale is Fisher Stevens in Short Circuit. It's a scale of
offensiveness.
Yeah, a scale of offensiveness. Where do you put this? Is this closer to Shane Dawson and Mickey Rooney? Or is it?
It's a negative depiction, overwhelmingly negative. And it's done for, the joke is that he's a lowly little worm and that he's supposed to be funny, that he's talking like a person of Indian descent.
What's even weirder, just going by the science of writing, is that he turns into this slave Indian guy. And then like minutes later, in the Indian costume, he's like, oh, I got an idea. And he turns into Auntie Nelda.
Yes, he goes into a closet. He gets the neck brace apparently in there.
Why didn't he just dress up like Auntie Nelda to begin with? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. And also, this is the worst Auntie Nelda. She barely tells any jokes. She just kind of mutters.
Yeah.
She walks in a straight line.
She is more tired than we've seen her in the past. She's going down to the furnace to throw her dead husband's ashes away.
Okay, that is funny.
That's funny.
That's a Nelda.
That she doesn't like
well, guess what? She throws them in the guy's face.
Bazoo.
Who is the guy? Bazoo?
Bazoo.
He's just the muscle. He's not Tim the villain. He's the guy who helps him for some reason.
There's an implied chase scene.
Sure, a lot of implied stuff in this movie.
They didn't film it. So now we have Ernest and Renee hanging out in the middle of Africa in the woods. They need to make a fire. They need food. They find a bag of chips, so they don't need food.
We get a kind of, it feels like something that's been done in Ernest movies, and it kind of was in Scared Stupid. But what it is it's almost like a character montage that he's done before, but it's a Gizmos montage where he's like showing off all this stuff that he has to fight animals in the woods.
Yeah.
It was a lot like when he has all the anti-troll stuff in Scared Stupid.
Yeah. It's by far the most visually cool part of the movie, right?
Yeah, there's like 10, 20 seconds in a row where they did some effects lighting, and Ernest looks over to the woods and he sees like creepy monster eyes. They're like Halloween decorations you could have gotten at Sears.
I kind of liked it. We have a very low resolution version of this movie that we're watching.
I mean, everyone does, right?
Yeah.
Like the movie is only really available on Amazon Prime, and it's probably a rip from the beta version of the movie. And there's one line when he's showing off the technology he has that's going to let him survive in Africa, and it's
Some bananas to bribe the monkeys. It's always good, Renee, to have the monkeys on your side.
Ernest has had the monkeys not on his side at some point.
But anyway, this is when we start to realize, oh, this is going to be kind of a Kate Capshaw or like a Romancing the Stone kind of movie where they're falling in love out in the wilderness.
She's stuck with Ernest, so she falls with him.
Yeah.
He's not Humphrey Bogart. He's not.
Yeah, he's not even Michael Douglas.
I thought there was Robert Redford. He's not any of these people.
He's no
I
one.
want
He's
to
Jim
make that
Varney,
very
right?
clear.
I have a note that says, "Hey, elephants."
Oh, yeah.
I remember thinking this. There's a scene where these actors are in the same shot as some real elephants, and that was the moment when I realized, like, okay, I guess this is why they didn't just shoot this in Vancouver.
This one scene.
Up to this part, there's been no reason to shoot this in South Africa. We should talk about the prince, because he's kind of the head villain in this movie.
Sure,
right?
I barely remember.
Well, the villain is working for this guy.
Yeah.
He looks like Andy Serkis and Eddie Izzard kind of mashed together.
It's a valid assessment.
I thought Eddie Izzard as well.
He's evil, so he plays putt-putt golf while he's talking business. Only he puts it into some old man's mouth for some reason. Anyway, he has a harem.
Yeah.
The harem is a big part of this movie.
Yes.
Because Renee has become part of his harem.
Yeah. And Ernest goes into disguise once again as a woman to
harem
rescue
girl.
her. It's like two scenes almost back to back where he does this.
In this, though, it's a sexy belly dancer. You get to see Jim Varney's stomach a bunch in this movie.
Yeah.
Is it cute? No. Is it clever? No. It's like Bugs Bunny dressed up as a lady, and when Elmer Fudd, it's like when they lift up the veil and it's Bugs Bunny and it's funny. It's a lame joke, and it's a joke from a different time period. Is it transphobic or something? No. It's just dumb and lame.
It's just dumb and lame.
It's Looney Tunes level lame.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up, this is what, 1 year before Wild Wild West?
Sure.
Exact same thing happens in that movie.
Yep.
Do you remember? There's some belly
Will
dancers.
Smith.
Will Smith is in drag, and Loveless.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like, come here, you're the cute
Kenneth
one.
Branagh.
Thank you.
Director of Thor.
So yeah, Andy Serkis, Eddie Izzard says, like, oh, there's a cute new one, like, come here, and tries to get a kiss and like see Ernest's face and stuff. There's a weird extended gag where
The food in the veil.
where Ernest is eating food under his veil.
I kind of like that. That was probably
Yeah.
one of the better gags in the movie.
It's kind of disturbing. I felt, and he finally kisses him. Ernest goes, ew. I thought this would have been a good. I mean, if we're gonna do this homophobic shit, you might as well have the prince also do it.
Yeah.
Have like a
in his
little moment.
accent. Yeah.
Yeah. Like no one else ever does the ew.
When Ernest P. Worrell kisses Trantor the troll doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Nobody likes
So-
kissing Ernest
No,
in any
exactly.
of the movies.
There's a payoff with his harem girl outfit. After he and Renee run away, he takes off his top, and it's revealed that the Ernest outfit is somehow still on him under the harem outfit.
Oh, yeah.
Those sight gags always make me laugh. Like in school when he rips off the football equipment and he's got the clothing under it. I love that persistence that he's always wearing that outfit.
So they knock out a ostrich farmer who's driving a truck.
Yeah.
You never see any ostriches, but you see a lot of ostrich eggs because they're in a car chase, and Ernest is in the back, still with his eyelashes on.
Yeah.
And he uses his bra to launch these big ostrich eggs at the bad
They
guys.
really thought this was funny.
This was one of the things I remembered from the movie was the big,
Okay.
disgusting yellow yolks inside of these ostrich
This is like
eggs.
the big action scene. This is
Yeah,
like
sure.
the penultimate action scene of the movie, which is usually like the big budget scene.
All right, as a car chase, do you think this is better or worse than anything in Ernest Rides Again?
Rise Again had better car chases. He's like making like zingers about eggs and making omelets and all this stuff as he fires them. For some reason, the henchmen working with Tim can't shoot Ernest.
No. Their car eventually goes off the road and explodes. I forget who's driving the car, if they come back later or if these are characters that are dead now. It looks like a deadly explosion, right?
Yeah.
I think we skipped over. They encounter some tribes people, not as isolated as the people who had the diamonds, but they don't speak Ernest's language and
English.
Yeah, sure, Ernest's language. And what's the deal with them? That's just...
The scene could have been cut out completely.
Yeah.
But you're right, they're pushing for 90 minutes.
Yeah, they are. It just cuts to, like, Ernest has befriended them now, and he tells them the last half of a joke, which is, "It's a knick-knack, Patty Jack. Give the frog alone." And they're all laughing, and there's one tribeswoman who keeps kissing Ernest on the cheek.
That was kind of funny.
It's kind of cute. The prince, whatever his name is, has a pet rhino named Dorothy, and he's punishing two of his henchmen for not catching Ernest. He's buried them up to their necks, and this stock footage rhino, I guess, they never showed in shot with humans, runs towards the henchmen and decapitates them, apparently. It's off camera, but you hear some gross sound effects.
Rhinos don't eat people. I want to make that clear. Rhinos are herbivores.
Does it just trample them or something?
I'm not going to lie. I thought to this, and please don't cut to this when we're editing. Have either of you ever seen the Malcolm McDowell Caligula, where at the beginning of the film he has this preposterous machine, like a giant lawnmower that cuts off people's heads?
I've heard of this. I don't know
buried
what
up
to
the
imagine
sand?
with the lawnmower, but I'm imagining like an Ernest version of it where it's just like...
It's a question of like, I don't know why you bothered to make this. It's like you had to come up with a reason to use the rhino because you were lucky enough to get it.
Yeah, I think they thought like, well, there's got to be animals in this movie.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of...
Stock footage.
There's a lot of stock footage, yeah. But there's also a lot of Africa movies in the 90s. This is part of post-Lion King, post-Gods Must Be Crazy, where you got Jim Carrey, or you got the Wild Thornberrys, or you got Congo, where it's all very animal-centric.
Yeah, that must be why they thought Ernest should go to Africa. Ernest is befriending these locals. He tells Renee, like, "Hey, I know how to talk to these people." He walks over and he starts to immediately do this like convoluted handshake.
Oh my God.
Hey, homies, what's happening? What it is, bro?
What's up, homies?
Yeah, hey, homies, what it is, bro. And then he does the handshake, and it's just, why?
I don't know.
Never assume malice when incompetence is just as likely. But going back to Slam Dunk Ernest, one thing that you really liked about that movie, Ryan, was that Ernest never really tried to keep up.
He never speaks in Ebonics, except when he just did in this movie right now. He never had like the backwards hat or like Macaulay Culkin in the Michael Jackson black and white music video. He never like tried to do the Bart man. You know, he's never like insulting or condescending.
Ernest goes up and says, I know how to talk to these people. And he does, African-American shit to these African tribes people.
Well, he does rap stuff. He thinks he's like doing street cred handshake shit.
Yeah. And it's, shitty 90s.
It is condescending. It's pandering. It's not a good movie.
And, a guy realizes that Ernest is being condescending and racist and just hits him over the head.
Yeah.
Knocks him out. But it's not enough. It doesn't make up for this thing you just had Ernest do that's really offensive.
It just felt super lame. Ernest is always this like, he's always been a surrogate uncle figure to me, or I think anybody that grew up watching the Ernest movies in the 80s and 90s. And to see him do what it is, bro, and try to like be hip. And he's like, he lays it on thick that he thinks this is what black culture is.
Yeah.
Because the setup to this joke involves him telling Renee, "Oh, I used to work at a record store. That's how I know how to speak this dialect."
You wait here. You have to know how to talk to these people.
So it's irrefutable. Ernest thinks this is how black people talk. And it's like universal. It's just a cringe moment. The wide angle lens, he's got like the poison ivy stuff going on in his face. It's just the whole package is just it's just gray and limp and unfunny. There's just nothing to rescue it. It doesn't hold up the way that anything from Camp did or what have you. So,
yeah, I didn't like it either.
By the end of the movie, we're literally dealing with like the spear chucking stuff that would come after Bugs Bunny in the 50s. Like it just keeps getting worse and worse and lower.
So they encounter the isolated Sinkatutu tribe. They're cannibals.
They're not even there to like help Ernest to go like, "Oh, we get the eyes back. Thank you for unknowingly, foolishly returning our stolen property." Now, I'm glad they don't do anything dumb like try to worship him as a god.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was going to happen. They almost do it.
Yep.
As soon as I saw them and realized that they were cannibals, I paused the movie. I wrote down this note to prove to myself that I'm psychic. They're going to think Ernest is a god, aren't they? Because of his yo-yo tricks.
Yep.
And I was half right.
Yeah.
They don't think he's a god, but they think like, all right, he's cool. We won't eat him. He can do magic with the yo-yo.
Yeah.
We'll still eat Renee.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Well, they're literally like stirring a giant soup pot with a bone.
Yeah. This is reinforcing some really negative stereotypes that the West has about Africa. Don't go there like, oh, because maybe I'll get malaria. No, they're cannibals. They eat white people.
Yeah. Some of my favorite stuff with the Ernest movies is just the throwback Warner Brothers Looney Tunes motif bits they've done in jail and the classic Ernest movies, like when he's setting the bear trap and Scared Stupid and stuff. It's just like watching a man become a cartoon.
Well, this movie, they don't even really go for it as a joke. They don't have them like putting like a giant like shaker of salt on Ernest or anything like that.
Which would be
really, yeah, that would be a joke. But this is just treated as like, oh, of course they're cannibals, you know?
The way we're going to modernize this Bugs Bunny joke is by making it a little more serious and stoic. It's like, no. It's an Ernest movie. Have somebody like cutting like carrots into the pot with Ernest if for some reason you have to do this scene.
Tim, the villain, I guess, he shows up and somehow does not get killed by the tribe.
Nor do they even consider eating him.
They like him.
No, off camera, he just talks his way out of it. And he's like, take me to the idiot. And like, they bring him to Ernest. And what do? They let them duke it out, I guess?
There's like a ritual where they can fight, right? And they each get to pick their own weapons.
Oh, yeah.
And Ernest has the crap in his pocket. It's like a joke right out of The Mask or something like that.
He's got a bunch of his stuff.
His toys, his gum and stuff. And the other guy, Tim, has Mortal Kombat armor on.
He's like a ridiculous Taekwondo instructor in a strip mall in Pennsylvania.
Yes, that's exactly what he looks like.
I laughed out loud when I saw him, and he's not supposed to be the joke isn't that.
Did they set up earlier that he knows martial arts?
No, definitely not.
Tim has a bunch of fucking scary weapons. He's got stars. He's got an axe, or as Renee calls it, one of those axe things, which I did find funny.
Yeah.
Ernest just has the table that he had all of his junk on.
Yeah.
And it saves his ass. Like everything keeps getting stuck. He uses the axe. He strips off parts of the table, so the table's getting thinner and thinner until we do finally get a joke.
Yep.
And it's Ernest. It's like the thinnest slat of this table, and Ernest is just poking his head out.
It's impossibly thin for him to hide behind.
It's a special effect.
They did it in jail. We've done it in numerous videos over the years. It's an easy joke, but it's always
It's Bugs Bunny hiding behind the tiny thin tree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not impressive when Bugs Bunny does it because he's not a real person, though.
The whole time Renee's being slowly dipped into a soup, right? How does Ernest get out of this?
He uses the yo-yo to win the fight.
Yeah.
And some of his toys and stuff, and I don't know. It's just a bunch of fucking junk that he has.
But why can't Ernest just pull out like the chainsaw he had earlier, or all?
Because the monkeys stole it.
Yeah, but where was he hiding this stuff before? Like this kind of finale doesn't hold water in any way. Like there's no setup that this guy Tim.
Ernest, he's a character in an adventure game, and he's got an infinite inventory that he's just carrying around with him, I guess. There is a bit before this fight where Ernest tries to pull some strings with the chief and get him and Renee married. Mm-hmm. Renee's not okay with it, but Ernest just kind of says like, go ahead, we're gonna get married, trust me. And they say like, all right, well, first we have to circumcise you. Right?
Yeah.
They don't say the word circumcise, but they imply that Ernest is gonna get circumcised before Tim shows up.
He's like, oh, I've already had that operation done.
Yeah.
Who is this for?
I don't know. Did they think that like the audience was aging up with them and they were trying to do like more adult jokes?
I knew they thought that when they made Jail, that they had to kind of give it a little more teeth, and it worked after Christmas in Camp. But by this movie, there's a lot of just like mean and unfunny jokes that never quite land. And I'm not even talking about the brown face stuff. Like there's just a lot of like weird violence that it like shocks you into paying attention. You're like, what? They're talking about chopping Ernest's dick off? What are they doing? Like, what's going on here? When watching movies nowadays, you're always aware when you're watching on a streaming service how much time is left in the movie. Were you guys just watching the clock, like going like, there's like 3 minutes left. When is this going to end?
I split this up into two. I did it just about at the halfway mark.
Yeah.
And it actually, I will say, it didn't feel like that much time. It kind of went by quickly. Yeah. I didn't enjoy it, but it was over.
Ryan, were you able to watch it in one go?
No.
Me either.
You had like 4 attempts, right?
It took me 4 tries. I watched like the first 15 minutes, went to the gym, put the movie on my phone, and I was running on the treadmill trying to like get my energy up without having to like drink coffee. I couldn't do it. Like it took like 2 different days of watching it to get through the whole thing.
I watched a good chunk of this on the train, and I made sure to sit way in the corner where no one could see it.
No one's noticing. Yeah.
I don't want to get called out.
I watched the whole movie all the way in a total of twice.
Jesus.
It took me a couple of times.
You're a hero.
But I watched the entire movie through twice. Never from start to finish. And having watched the film twice, I still have difficulty tracking who took what from who in terms of the eyes of Ugoli.
I can tell you. The prince wants those diamonds. Who knows how he knows about them.
Yeah.
So he hired this mercenary or whatever, Tim, we're calling him. I don't know what his fucking name is. Tim is flying the airplane at the beginning with his partner. He strands his partner, leaves his partner to die. He comes back and then off camera has the diamonds stolen from him by the thief who's running through the thrift place.
The bazaar.
The bazaar, yeah.
The brown-faced thief who's hanging out in Tennessee or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's just like brown face upon brown face in this film. So then he gets the diamond back from Ernest, and he has... I think the 2 guys in suits are also working for him, but they're also working for the prince. Maybe they got teamed up at some
The
point.
Men in Black looking guys.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have to admit, it's convoluted.
It is convoluted, and a lot of stuff happens off camera.
Exactly. Too much.
Yeah.
It makes Dumb and Dumber look like Shakespeare. Because it's the same idea, like this convoluted, like G-Man-esque plot with secret agents and the feds getting involved and all these like backdoor shenanigans and
This was a huge thing in comedy movies back then.
Yeah, but in Dumb and Dumber, it's funny. Here, it's like,
Sure.
It feels like a means to an end. Like, well, we can't afford to get this actor this day, and we just need someone to play a thief. It's like, consolidate a little bit. Just a little bit. Like, it's so hard to wrap our heads around this, and what we end up with is so much of the movie being spent without Ernest.
Yeah.
And when he's even in the movie, Ernest doesn't quite feel in character. Just the filmmaking technique here, the editing, like the framing, the pacing, like it's just really hard to bite into any minute of this movie.
So how does Ernest win the fight?
With the yo-yo.
Does he do Around the World? That's the bit.
think so.
And he hits him with the
Maybe.
yo-yo. Yeah, sure.
When he first does the yo-yo tricks in the movie, and he's like announcing himself, and you hear the echo, I could watch more of that. I was like kind of into that. I was like, oh, Jim Varney doing yo-yo tricks? They're not great yo-yo tricks.
That's a
but-
very Jim Varney thing to be good at, yo-yo tricks.
Yeah, I had a moment where I was like, oh shit, did Jim Varney learn a bunch of yo-yo shit for this movie? So Tim, the villain, he doesn't die.
Nope. He's just defeated by the yo-yo tricks.
Yeah, he's embarrassed temporarily. He doesn't get his $6 million. What happens to the prince who funded everything?
We don't know.
No.
What happens to Tim and all of his henchmen and guns and his tanks and the various ways he could easily apprehend Ernest once again?
Doesn't matter. We're just going to leave all that in Africa where it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, the tribe, they get their diamonds back because the yo-yo breaks in half.
Ernest doesn't get the girl because she wants a more down-to-earth guy now.
She had one adventure in her life and went, nope.
Ernest kind of gives a speech about being a loner once again and breaks an ostrich egg over his head. And
Yeah, that's it.
It's a lot like at the end of Slam Dunk Ernest when he just walks out the back door and might as well say, it's over.
I at least like the ending of Slam Dunk because it is just like a parade of people walking out from the movie, and Ernest comes out last, and he gives like a good 20-second bullshit speech. He's like, oh yeah, just a little fancy footwork. It's just Jim on fire.
Yeah.
Like being really funny. It's just one last excuse for him to like be smarmy about, yep, I was a great basketball player with my magic shoes. Like that's at least funny. And now I'm laughing because I'm thinking about another movie. Ernest goes to Africa. He breaks an egg over his head. What do you think happened after Slam Dunk? Do you think Slam Dunk, they had money coming from, maybe there was some Christian children's entertainment money that came into it? We could research this, but we didn't. What happened? Why is there so much less finesse and effort put into the script with Ernest Goes to Africa?
My guess is that a lot of the production went into even just getting to Johannesburg, and that it might have just been so cheap to film there. It was cost effective to bring the whole production there.
Africa's cheaper than Canada, which is cheaper than Tennessee.
Yeah, it could be that simple.
Jeez.
You were pointing out earlier, and it's almost something to remind yourself if you feel bad for Jim Varney at this point in his career. He was working on a lot of other things at the time, right?
Yeah, I was going through his IMDb page because I felt bad. And I went like, oh, he was in the Beverly Hillbillies at this point.
He probably made good
And-
money on that.
And he was already the voice of Slinky Dog in Toy Story.
Yep.
That if you look at it on paper, he was stepping away from Ernest. It looked like his career was moving past Ernest.
Yeah, he was giving himself other things to do, and he may have just still been doing these movies as an obligation to John Cherry and the people who really made his career happen.
And these movies might have been quick to make. They might have had enough money to make it worth his while. While he does look more tired because of the shooting conditions and his age, and he was starting to get sick around this point in his life, he still doesn't quite phone it in. You do see the hours weighing on him. He's still making the right faces and putting effort into his deliveries. But this is probably the worst I've seen in the whole series out of him. I would not recommend this movie. Even if you love Ernest, I just don't watch it, right?
Yeah.
Not to cut too much of the legs off of the ranking segment, but man, was there any joke in this movie that made you laugh out loud that you can remember?
I like Aunt Edna, but I already liked her.
But
thank you. Her whole bit about throwing out her dead husband's ashes in the furnace in the basement, that could have just been a funny segment on Hey Vern, It's Ernest.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was maybe a couple Jim Varney lines that I like, a couple of Linda Cash lines that I liked. Just really not anything to grab onto in this movie.
Linda Cash and Jim, they have decent chemistry. I think it's the worst role she's been given. She still tries. She has to carry the movie in a few key scenes, and she does her job. But this movie, man. And we're back with questions from patrons. We have a Patreon account set over at guaranteedvideo.com where you can ask questions for the Ernest Roulette show and see episodes early and all that happy horse shit. Ryan, what questions do we have for the Ernest Goes to Africa episode?
We got some good ones. Stephen Crawford asks us, are there any directors that you wish had the chance to make an Ernest film? Good question.
This is one of those revisionist history things where I always think in sci-fi terms, like, oh no, if I gave this director an Ernest movie, would that ruin their career and I wouldn't get the later movies?
Oh.
But assuming that isn't the case, if it's just this like wonderful genie wish, I think Sam Raimi would have made a great Ernest movie.
Oh yeah, sure.
Hell yeah. I mean, we've mentioned before, the Evil Dead movies are kind of Ernest movies at points. Like you can imagine Jim Varney playing Ash.
Sam Raimi's particular fast, fun style for if Ernest's leg is caught in anything.
Yeah.
Of just that, oh no, like the stakes are immediate now. He's about to be chopped up in the wood chipper.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen now. Sam Raimi would do a great job.
Sam Raimi has that funny thing too, where it's almost a massive waste of resources with the people he's accumulated over the years. The names, he kind of broke Liam Neeson in a way with Darkman. Like Liam Neeson was known before. That movie and Army of Darkness, which he cast M. Beth Davis in, were basically the reasons Schindler's List had those two in it.
Yeah.
Like, so Sam Raimi would probably bring in some crazy big actors to complement Jim Varney. He'd have Bill Pope shooting it. It would be a completely overqualified movie, like from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I'm trying to think like who would be like in actual realm of possibility. This is a total cop-out answer, but Coke Sam's directed Goes to School. Yeah. He should have done a couple more movies. They should have traded roles or something,
Yeah.
Every other movie is directed by John Cherry.
Yeah. I agree. I think Coke Sam's should have done at least one more. Maybe Africa would have been better if Coke Sam's had done it.
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan? You got anybody you're thinking of?
Wes Anderson. I think that a highly symmetrical universe in which it's okay you get struck by lightning. It's okay that you get run over. It's okay. People who get run over or fall off mountains come back with a black eye and a Band-Aid. He's going to be okay. He could be really funny. I think he would fit into this universe fine. I think his strengths would be exemplified better if he wasn't the star of the film, if he was a supporting character.
Jim Varney, were he alive today, would make a great roster addition to the wheelhouse that Anderson pulls from.
Yeah,
I could easily picture the subdued Jim Varney in any of his movies. Like Jim Varney as like a therapist would have been
He'd be
wonderful.
a great like Southern aristocrat.
Yes.
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 I just had a thought. If you can imagine, like after Scared Stupid didn't do so well, but Disney wanted to hang on to the movies,
Yeah.
so they'd take the reins from John Cherry. They would probably give it to someone like Joe Johnston, who was kind of a journeyman.
Yeah, just get the movie made.
Just
Yeah.
get the movie made, and they'd continue to like keep that budget high.
Yeah.
I can see that saving the series in a few ways.
What if Alex Winters was hired to direct the movie after Scared Stupid. I don't know if anyone here has seen Freaked. Wonderfully weird movie. Not indicative of Winter's other directorial efforts, which are very technocentric, modern documentaries about the implications of cryptocurrency and so forth. But I could easily see the team that made Freaked making Ernest, and it would just be Scared Stupid dialed up to PG-13. There's no way that team could make a PG-rated movie.
It's crazy, yeah.
And I wonder Ernest being dragged kicking and screaming into like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre world, how that would work out for them.
I would love to see for the time and place that would have had like Encino Man and Biodome, to see like a better budget Dr. Otto movie. The MTV audience was there. They would have bought it.
Sure.
Clive Barker. Next question.
Jort asks, do you think Jim Varney might have come to resent either the character or the series?
None of us have read the books.
Not yet.
That exist about Jim Varney, so we don't actually know.
From what I understand, Jim was worried in terms of career or legacy that all he would be known for is Ernest, in the same way that Sean Connery was with Bond and a few other people. I mean, he got to do Toy Story, which is a much more popular franchise.
Yes.
Several magnitudes more popular. Many more people will know Slinky the Dog than Ernest P. Worrell in the years to come.
Yes.
My assumption was that there was probably a little bit of resentment, like, oh, people just know me as Ernest. But Ernest broke him big, man. Jim Varney
was really struggling and did not enjoy Hollywood. I know that much.
He left Hollywood early in his career. He did TV pilots that didn't work out. And Ernest, I mean, people loved Ernest. I'm sure by the last movie or so, it was more of a favor to a friend. I don't think he was that hard up for money. I don't know if you could fake the kind of energy he kept bringing to the lens in those movies.
This is a guy who would shoot 30 commercials in a day before these movies came out.
Yeah.
He's just like an absolute workhorse, and I don't think that had left him by the end of the series.
No.
I don't think it was in him to really resent the movies. If he did, he kept it a secret because it just wasn't his style.
He was a very private man. I believe he wore rings. I knew this, that he wore these rings that looked like the drama faces, like the laughing and the crying mask.
Oh.
He really cared about his craft. For some reason, I don't label Jim Varney as an overactor, even though he's literally like going like he's literally a living cartoon. I don't think you could fake that if you genuinely resented the project as much as sometimes I think he could have.
I think about a great story I listened to on NPR about the actor who portrayed Steve from Blue's Clues after he was done with after the show had ended. And in this story, it's hilarious. Just Google Steve Blue's Clues, NPR. And he's trying to impress a woman, and while doing so, he takes her out to dinner, they go on a date, but then he sees, they're driving, and he sees in a neighborhood a children's birthday party, and he goes, watch this. He goes out, pops the trunk where he has a few Steve outfits, and he just crashes a kid's party, and everyone loses their minds, except Dad, who doesn't know who Steve is, and is like, why is this man
He's calling the cops
in my backyard doing the male song? I don't know who he is.
Yeah.
But I bet as a grown man dressed like Ernest with two other grown men dressed like Ernest, I keep an Ernest outfit in my car. I bet Jim Varney, on his darkest day, if he suffered from depression or otherwise, could pop his trunk and dresses anywhere he goes, dresses Ernest. People would love him. We know he got a bigger hit than Mickey Mouse. Even at Christmas time, I bet he'd get a bigger hit than Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't make you feel good, then
He created something new. That respect and that admiration he had for the craft of acting, I'm sure he got a bit self-conscious about the Ernest character, but he did literally start as a commercial and then become a bona fide movie star.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was not lost on him.
Well, that's all the questions we can take this time. Gentlemen, shall we rank Ernest Goes to Africa?
I don't think that's necessary.
No.